Joining us this morning is former U.S. Ambassador to the UN and Senior Fellow at the American Enterprise Institute, John Bolton. Ambassador, good to see you. Thanks so much for joining us. Do you agree with Secretary Kelly? Do you think that perhaps with a little more time and collaboration, things could have been rolled out differently?
Well, I think clearly that's the case. I think the biggest problem was that the order itself wasn't carefully enough drafted. I mean, I'm a lawyer. I can't help myself. I read this stuff. It contains exemptions for things like diplomatic visa holders, for previously existing international agreements like the FLAP with Australian Prime Minister Turnbull. It has a provision for the Secretaries of State and Homeland Security to grant exemptions on a case-by-case basis. So it wasn't a blanket moratorium on the 7 countries. It had exemptions. Did they intend to exempt green card holders or did they not? We don't know. They eventually rolled at the end of the first day to say it wasn't intended to cover green card holders. But they thought of exemptions and they just didn't put them in. I don't buy the argument they wanted to get it out quickly. If that's the case, they should have prepared it during the transition and rolled it out on the 21st of January. Then they would have had several weeks to prepare it, and they could have done it immediately. There would have been no break for the terrorists to get in. So a lot of things went wrong, and you know, I think unfortunately the effect of the rollout, given the political nature of some of the judges on the Ninth Circuit, could affect the ruling we expect any minute now.
One of the things also, Ambassador, speaking to the speed with which this travel ban was put in place, is now even, you saw it on the call last night with the Ninth Circuit, that the Trump administration is kind of struggling to defend the ban. You had 2 attorneys who had to step away who were in charge of arguing the case on behalf of the Justice Department. Those 2 lawyers couldn't take part in Tuesday's hearing because they had a past relationship with Jones Day, the giant law firm. And if you listened to that call last night, you're an attorney. The Justice Department lawyer struggled a bit.
Well, I don't know who the attorney was, and so I can't really comment on that. But I don't have any trouble arguing that the president has near plenary authority here under the Constitution to exclude aliens from the country. That's absolutely basic. It's a different story when you're talking about green card holders and the like. But the Congress has acted, the president has broad constitutional authority to exclude whole classes of aliens if he deems it in the interest of the United States. I have no faith the Ninth Circuit will get this right. Really, this is just a limited ruling we're expecting on the validity of a temporary restraining order. This is going to work its way through the courts. By the time it gets to the Supreme Court, there will be 9 justices there, and then we'll get a definitive ruling.
Mr. Ambassador, good morning. It's Don Peebles. Do you think this is a good idea for the president to have implemented this ban? And I'm not sure it's a ban as opposed to immigration reform by executive order, which he has full authority and broad authority to do.
Well, look, again, the terms of the executive order point out that for the 7 countries in question here, you simply either don't have, they're not capable of giving the United States adequate information on people seeking visas from them. There is no functioning government in Yemen. There is no functioning government in Libya. There are functioning governments in Iran and Iraq, 2 other countries named. I wouldn't trust those governments as far as I could throw them. So the notion of the moratorium is to give the Department of Homeland Security time to figure out whether they're getting adequate information such that they can issue visas. That goes, I think, to a second problem with the rollout, which was it looks like nobody sat around in the White House and said, do you think this thing might be controversial? Do you think maybe we ought to be prepared for this? So, you know, that's they found themselves on the back foot right from the beginning.
But so you didn't believe this is a good idea for the country, and what we're looking at now is it's how it was rolled out and also the politicalization of this process. But given that these countries cannot properly vet who's coming to our country, that it's important for the national security of the nation to understand who is entering our country.
Here's the thing, though. We keep hearing, sorry, Ambassador Bolton, this is Kat Timpf, we keep hearing until we figure out what's going on, et cetera, but I haven't heard anything in terms of how are we going to figure that out or how are we going to improve it. I mean, I think those kinds of specifics might give people hope that this wouldn't be a permanent thing.
Look, I can tell you from long experience, both at the State Department and the Justice Department, the immigration system, legal and illegal, is a mess. I remember right after 9/11, the Consular Affairs Assistant Secretary in the State Department said in a staff meeting with Secretary of State Powell that some of the participants in 9/11 had been granted visas because they had purchased first-class airplane tickets to get into the United States. And, you know, good grief, if you're purchasing first-class airplane tickets, you must be okay. The system needs a thorough top-to-bottom review. We're coming at this from behind because of the day-by-day events overwhelm us. How are we going to fix it? Well, in this case, it's very straightforward. Yeah. We've got countries that don't function. So somebody with a Libyan passport comes and applies for a visa. You could go to the Libyan government, whose writ barely runs outside government buildings, or Yemen or Syria or any number of the others. They just can't tell you.
Yeah, that's a really good analogy, actually. Ambassador, a new report out this morning is claiming that Yemen is barring the U.S. from running special operation ground missions in the wake of last month's commando raid that claimed the life of a Navy SEAL and several civilian casualties. What does this mean in terms of the fight against terrorism?
Pretty much nothing. You know, look, this is a political reaction by the government of Yemen. Civilians were killed in this most recent raid. They've suspended these activities before. I think it's noteworthy they have not suspended any American activities from the air over the territory of Yemen. And I think what will happen is the time will go by and our permission to accomplish these raids will be granted again. And look, if we found that there was grounds to do it, whether they gave us permission or not, I'm sure we'd go ahead and do it again anyway, as we should.
All right, we'll leave it there. Ambassador, always a pleasure. Thanks so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you.
We'll see you soon. Ambassador John Bolton there.